Welcome to another wonderful Susanna Calloway audiobook. We are excited to have you with us. Before we begin the story, please like and subscribe to our channel and share it with friends. This allows us to continue adding free clean Western romance audiobooks for you to enjoy. The following title is copyrighted by Susanna Calloway, Western romance author. Now, find a comfortable spot, relax, and enjoy the story. The Outlaw's Hesitant Bride. Prologue. Spurring their horses hard, the last members of the Wolf Gang galloped across the deserts of New Mexico territory, fleeing the robbery and the dead woman back in the small town of Silver Springs. Wyatt Thomas glanced over his shoulder and caught the hot, angry eyes of his father, Bill. Bill was the only man in a position to challenge the beastly gang leader, Hank Wolf. Though he seldom admitted it to himself, Wyatt walked in terror of Hank Wolf. With their mount stumbling in exhaustion under the hot, desert heat, Hank finally reined in as they approached the Guadalupe Mountains. "We ride high," he said gruffly, walking his lathered bay. "Lose, up yonder." Wyatt watched in trepidation as his father trotted his horse up alongside Hank's. "What the devil was that back there?" he snarled, his left hand grabbing Hank's reins and pulling both horses to a halt. "You just gunned down a woman, Hank." Hank, his shaggy dirt blonde hair falling past his collar, his 4-day-old scruffy beard covering his chin and jaws, glanced away from Bill's furious face. "She done got in the way." "Got in the way?" Bill's voice roared amid the desert canyon, echoing off the tall rocks and dancing across the cactus and gritty sand. "She wasn't even close to you. We had a clean getaway, and you shot her down like a mangy dog in the street." Wyatt glanced uneasily at the other two members, Jack Travers and Milt Hansen, who eyed him back, worry scampering across their scruffy faces. Wyatt looked just as scruffy, but at 19, his beard was more akin to fuzz than stiff hair. Bill had always told him he looked like his mother, fair skin, light blonde hair and big blue eyes, with a strong chin and high cheekbones. But Wyatt inherited his father's tall, raw-boned structure with heavy muscles and a penchant for trouble. "What good does it do to yammer about it now?" Hank retorted, finally looking back at Bill. "It's done. I killed her, yeah. We need to hightail it north, get out of New Mexico." "What good?" Wyatt thought his father was about to explode under the pressure of his fury. Bill normally was an even-tempered type, slow to anger, reasoning things out, helping to keep the peace amid an outlaw gang prone to quarreling often. "You just got every lawman, every federal marshal in the entire West, after us, Hank. Shooting that woman will spread the news of us from here to California. We can't go anywhere now without the law looking for us." Rather than admit his mistake and appease Bill and thus the gang, Hank's face split in a savage grimace. Saliva slicked his bared teeth. "You just shut your jaw, Thomas," he snarled. "I'm the leader here, not you. You don't be telling me what to do, you got that? I ain't gonna listen to your whining about that woman, not no more." "You better listen to me, you imbecile," Bill ripped back. "You're gonna get us all killed." Faster than a striking rattlesnake, Hank whipped his Colt from its holster, pointed it at Bill's chest, and squeezed the trigger. A stunned expression crossed Bill's face, as though someone just pulled an enormous joke on him he didn't understand. Then he slowly toppled from his saddle. "Pa!" Wyatt screamed. Hank lashed his bay with his reins, shouting, "Let's go." As Wyatt threw himself from his saddle to run to his father, Jack and Milt set spurs to their horses' hides and galloped on Hank's heels. After all, he had the stolen loot in his saddlebags. On his knees, Wyatt held Bill's head in his lap, young enough to still be able to weep without shame. Bill's hand rose to touch Wyatt's tears. "You get out of this life, boy," he mumbled. "You don't rob no one no more. You get clean." "Pa, don't talk, I gotta get you to a doc." "Hush," Bill whispered. "You keep safe, why here?" "In my saddlebags." "Map. Get out of this life. You got money if you need it. Get." His father gasped his last breath and died. His hazel eyes stared into space, empty of sight, of life. No! Wyatt screamed, rocking his father's body back and forth under the merciless sun. Pa, come back. I need you. Pa. The desert canyon echoed his sobs as though in sympathy. Wyatt wept, holding his father's body until the sun vanished behind the Guadalupes, and the cold stars emerged in the inky sky. He staggered to his feet, wiped his dirty, smudged cheeks, and dug a grave for his pa. Using rocks in his bare hands, he scraped out a shallow spot for Bill to spend eternity. After taking all the valuables from his body, and feeling like filth, Wyatt covered his father over with sand and dirt. As dawn broke over the eastern horizon, Wyatt obscured the mound with heavy rocks to keep scavengers from digging him up. Not knowing what to say over the grave, he took off his hat and stared down. I love you, Pa, he said simply. I'll miss you forever. I hope you know that. If God welcomes you into his kingdom, then maybe I'll see you there someday. I'll live the right life from now on, Pa, just as you asked me to. Ma said something to me once. That the Lord says vengeance is his. I don't know much about that, but I hope he don't mind if I take vengeance into my hands. Wyatt paused to take a deep breath, watching the sun rise in hues of pink and purple, clouds streaming up from the desert sands. Hank will die for what he did, Pa, someday, somehow. I will kill him for this. You have my word. Setting his hat back on his head, Wyatt swung atop his horse and pulled Bill's former mount in behind him. After a quick salute to his father's grave, Wyatt urged his horse into a swift trot, heading north. He had his destination already in his mind. His Aunt May's place, where he could make a fresh start, a clean start, where he would never rob anyone ever again. He rode north to Pine Ridge, Colorado. Chapter 1. 2 years later. Cassidy Fields stared into the smirking, ugly face of her father's business partner, a man almost as old as her father. Though mid-40s wasn't truly old, to Cassidy's 20-year-old mind, the age was the equivalent of a fossil, buried for God knew how long before being dug up. Excuse me, but what did you say? Arthur Ballinger actually giggled. Your father, bless his heart, has given his permission of our betrothal, my dear. Isn't that wonderful news? Cassidy turned her head to stare at her parents. They sat in the parlor of her family's wealthy townhouse in Philadelphia. A portrait of her great-grandfather, Horace Fields, who founded the family wealth somewhere in England before arriving on these shores right around the American Revolution, hung over the fireplace. Bright wallpaper stuck to the walls, and the dyed horsehair settee she sat upon threatened to buck her off and onto the thick Persian rug beneath her. Her mother, Louise, had shame enough to turn her face from her daughter's accusing eyes. Her father, Horace III, merely stared implacably back. Gathering her courage, Cassidy returned her cool gaze to Arthur Ballinger, hiding her outrage, fear and disgust under a facade of aloof disdain. Indeed, she replied, her voice lacking any emotion. Ballinger all but rubbed his hands with glee. Cassidy almost slapped his face when he patted her knee but refrained with a fierce grip on her self-control. Yes, my dear, he said, leaning toward her, his foul breath on her cheek. I was inconsolable after my dear Mildred died, and I need a beautiful wife to stand at my side at formal receptions. Then find some hag your own age. She craved to spit that request into his face, with its long jowls covered in gray hair, his bulging nose and very brown teeth almost matching his eyes exactly. She sent another venomous glance toward her father, who didn't witness it by the fact he was busily pouring brandy for himself and his guest. Louise and Cassidy didn't rate any. They never did. I have a son your age, Ballinger gushed, his gnarled fingers hovering over her thigh. You will like him. My daughter is 18 and will come out this year. Cassidy stood up. If you will excuse me, please. She drifted toward the door, hearing her mother call, but where are you going, dear? Cassidy half turned to reply, the door open. To my room. To slit my throat. She closed the door on the heels of Ballinger's high-pitched, squealing laughter. What a delightful girl, Horace. Just delightful. Cassidy, far too strong-willed and independent to kill herself, left the house, her fury and disgust riding her to the point that if she didn't talk with someone, she would explode. With her best friend since their school days, she knew she could rant, rave, cry, scream and otherwise vent her feelings in the safe environment of Emily Evans' arms. The busy Philadelphia street outside the townhouse filled her senses with noise, scents, and the sight of horses pulling hansom cabs, work drays pulling heavy wagons, others pulling buggies or carriages, and the rare beast who actually carried a rider. People with lesser wealth walked as Cassidy now did. She was too angry and upset to have the butler order a carriage brought around to her. Emily lived only a few blocks away, in any case, and Cassidy often walked there when she and her friend planned to meet. Though her visit this day would be unannounced, Cassidy knew Emily would see her. She would never turn Cassidy away. Nor did she. Emily opened the door to her modest house off the main street, a well-cared-for home that didn't shout wealth, but intimated some money within the family. Emily's father, a prominent Philadelphia lawyer, recently passed away, leaving his family with enough to live on for the rest of their lives. Cassidy, Emily exclaimed, embracing her friend warmly. Come in. You look, Cassidy tried to smile. Furious? Disgusted? In a tiff? All of the above. Emily closed the door behind her, gesturing for Cassidy to come with her. I was just having some tea. Want a cup? That sounds nice. She followed Emily down the hallway to the tastefully decorated kitchen, the table with chairs enough for a family of 6. Emily was 20, yet unlike Cassidy, she had 3 younger siblings, all still in school. Cassidy herself was an only child. She sat at the table as Emily poured tea from a pot into cups, set all on a tray with milk and sugar, then took the lot to the table. What's wrong? She asked, setting Cassidy's tea in front of her with milk next to it, knowing that was what Cassidy preferred. Cassidy suddenly felt like crying, and she prided herself on never being a crier. My dear father promised my hand in marriage, she retorted bitterly, sniffing them back. And this gentleman is not to your liking? Emily sipped her own tea, watching Cassidy over the rim of her cup. Come on, spill it. Who is it? Arthur Ballinger. Emily gasped, and her nose wrinkled. You. No wonder you're upset. Setting her tea down untasted, Cassidy put her face in her hands. Emily, what do I do? I can't marry him, he's disgusting. He's covered in hair and his teeth are brown. I know. Hence the you comment. He was a client of my father's. Cassidy lifted her face wearily. He was? I didn't know. No, you wouldn't know things like that. But he's been here to the house. Emily leaned forward, her small face intent. He leered at me. Oh, help. Cassidy put her face back in her hands. My father set me to marry Alec. Yes, he did. That man has an unsavory reputation around this city, Emily said, sipping her tea. He has been seen with loose women, Cass. If you marry him, be prepared for him to be unfaithful to you. Cassidy peered over her fingers at her friend. Perhaps I can simply tell my father that I refuse to marry him. And what would he do then? Emily asked with a lifted brow. Throw me out of the house and refuse to support me. Cassidy sighed. I'm doomed. Not necessarily, Emily replied, smiling. You can become a mail-order bride. A what? Emily poured more tea into Cassidy's cup, urging her to drink it with a gesture. There is an agency that works to unite single men in the West with unmarried women, usually from the East, like Philadelphia. They correspond through the mail, then the woman goes west and marries. Cassidy drank her tea, considering. But they never meet before she arrives to marry a virtual stranger? Emily stood up. Let me show you. Emily departed the kitchen, and Cassidy heard her footsteps on the stairs going to her room. Mail-order bride? What can be worse, marrying that boor or a stranger? After a few minutes, Emily returned with a small pile of letters. She sat down and spread them out on the table. I have been corresponding with a young man in Colorado, Emily told her, her blue eyes bright. Cass, I think I'm already falling in love with him. Cassidy's jaw dropped. You were planning to leave here to marry a man in Colorado, and you never even told me? Emily flushed a pale pink shade. I'm sorry I didn't tell you before, but I wanted to make sure this was truly happening. But yes, Wyatt and I have been corresponding for a couple of months now. I get a letter from him almost every day. And you think I should do this? Cassidy asked, still stunned. Find a man in the West and marry him? I think it would be better than marrying that old monster, Emily replied, picking up her cup once more. But, Cassidy paused and licked her lips, not liking what she had to ask. But what if the man you're writing to is not truly who and what he says he is? Half expecting a sharp rebuke, Cassidy braced herself. Emily merely nodded slowly. That's a risk, I know, she replied, her tone thoughtful. But in his letters, Wyatt seems to be a warm and kind man. He's young, has ambitions to build a ranch, and is living with his aunt until he does. I see. Emily reached across the table to take Cassidy's hand. You should try it. You're far too beautiful to be wasted on Bollinger. Your auburn hair is stunning, and your eyes, I don't think many folks have eyes quite that shade of reddish-brown, almost like cinnamon. Cassidy glanced away. Perhaps I should, Em. But I don't trust quite as easily as you do. I know you don't. Give it some thought, though. There are more men than women in the Wild West, and many young men like Wyatt are seeking wives to raise families with. It's a chance for a new start. As well as an escape, Cassidy said with a grin. Exactly. Chapter 2. Sitting on the wide porch that surrounded his Aunt May's house, Wyatt listened to the coyotes yip in the distance and watched the stars emerge as the sun went down. A light breeze rifled through the tall pines and evergreens that surrounded the house, the scent of pine sap teasing his nose. Though he could scarcely read it in the dark, he smiled as he fingered Emily Evans' latest letter. Had she bought a train ticket yet? Wyatt half turned at the sound of May's voice behind him. She stood behind the screen door, watching him, the light of a lamp behind her casting her shadow onto the porch. Yes, he replied, gesturing with the letter. She bought it with the money I sent, but the train won't arrive for another week. His aunt, May Bailey, was his father's only sister, a widow who had lost her husband several years back. Wyatt couldn't help but think of his father. Bill had planned to leave the Wolf gang long before Hank Wolf gunned him down, but he hadn't due to the threats Hank made against him if he dared try. He had wanted his son Wyatt to leave the life of an outlaw behind him, which Wyatt managed to do only after his father's death. May came out of the house to sit in a chair beside him. It will be lovely to have your bride here, Wyatt. I appreciate you letting us live here with you until I can build my ranch. He watched May gaze out over the small town of Pine Ridge less than a mile away. I've been so lonely since John passed away, she said, her voice soft. Until you came, that is. I'm happy to have you both stay as long as you want. I know, he replied. But a new bride wants her own home, where we can raise our children. I know Emily will love you as much as I do. She reached over to take his hand. Your father would be so proud of you, Wyatt. I know I haven't made much of myself since I came, he admitted, also staring out at the lights in the town. But I ain't robbed anyone, at least. I'm living a clean life, even if I am just a drudge at the hardware store. And saving up to buy your own place. You're only 21, you have plenty of years ahead of you. Wyatt squeezed her hand, smiling. I reckon so. I hope Emily don't mind that she won't have her own place for a year or so. If she's as sweet a girl as you believe she is, May told him, then she won't mind. You have told her about your past, haven't you? Wyatt dropped her hand and stared at the plank floor of the porch. He didn't answer. Oh, Wyatt, May said, her tone slightly sharp. You have to tell her. You cannot marry a girl with a lie between you. I haven't found the guts to tell her, Wyatt admitted. I'm afraid if I do, she'll refuse to marry me. Maybe it's not a lie if I don't say anything. Wyatt Thomas, you listen to me. A lie of omission is still a lie. You tell that girl you used to be an outlaw, and how your father died. It's not fair to bring her out here, marry her, and force her to live with the fact. You cannot marry her without telling her. She must be given the choice. Wyatt nodded unhappily. I will, May. Somehow. Chapter 3. Twice Cassidy wrote a letter to the mail-order bride agency, and twice tore it up in a flurry of uncertainty. Frustrated and hesitant, she didn't know what to do. In her mind, she had only two choices: marry the known, a man who disgusted and appalled her with his behavior and live the rest of her life in unhappiness. Or marry the unknown and risk being unhappy with a stranger. But, she told herself, I may also find complete and total happiness out there in the Wild West. It could truly go either way, she realized. Her mother, Louise, appeared in the doorway to the sunroom where Cassidy often liked to sit, especially when she wished to think. What is it bothering you, dear? She asked, her hands folded at her waist. The auburn hair Cassidy had inherited from her had been tightly coiled into a bun at the back of her head, her slightly plump figure clad in a pale lavender gown beaded with mother-of-pearl buttons and trimmed with white lace. As usual, Louise didn't smile, and Cassidy often thought her father's severity had killed that ability in her mother long ago. Cassidy stared out the window to the rooftops of the townhouses across the street. You know what's wrong. I don't want to marry Bollinger. That's Mr. Bollinger, Louise corrected, striding into the room. And he is a fine catch for a young lady of your status. Cassidy scowled. He's old and ugly and a leck. Watch your language, Louise snapped harshly. He is a man of great wealth and influence in this city, and you should count your blessings that he has agreed to marry you. Blessings, huh? Cassidy rolled her eyes. Why can't I marry his son? He's not bad looking and he's at least my age. That is if father insists upon a family connection with that old boor. Cassidy Fields, I am warning you for the last time. Cassidy leaped to her feet. I'll call him what I will, mother. You know of his lewd behavior as well as I do, and he is despicable and nasty, and I know you don't want this marriage any more than I do. Louise at least had to grace to look away. You're right, Louise said finally. I do not agree with your father's choice. But I have no say in the matter, as you very well know. Your father has made up his mind, and there's no changing it. It's my life, Cassidy snapped. I should have a say in who I marry. As it is, I'm little more than a brood mare, sold to whomever father decrees. I'm not even ready to get married. I want to live a little, experience things in life before I settle down. Such things are not meant for daughters, Louise replied in a dull tone. A girl must marry whom her father chooses, raise children and please her husband. If I had been born a boy, I could, is that it? Men get to choose for themselves, but a girl cannot. Cassidy laughed bitterly. That's certainly not fair. Leaving the sunroom, Cassidy marched down the stairs toward the door, all but running her mother's maid over in her hurry to get out of the house. In her anger, she forgot her bonnet to put on her head, and her long silky red hair flowed down her back. Not intending to go out that day, she had put on a plain dress of pale blue that barely covered her ankles. Thus, her garment and her loose hair caused many folks she passed to stare at her in faint shock. Not caring a whit, Cassidy stalked to Emily's house to knock on the door, desperately needing Emily's cool-headed advice and a cup of soothing tea. When Emily opened the door, she discovered she'd get neither that day. Emily? Cassidy asked, concerned. What's wrong? Emily pulled her into the house, her pale face puffy from weeping. Once the door had closed, she flung herself into Cassidy's arms. Oh, Cass, she cried, weeping on her shoulder, Mother has taken ill. Ill? Cassidy asked, holding Emily's trembling body close. How ill? What's wrong with her? Emily released her, wiping the tears from her cheeks. Let's go to the kitchen. This time, it was Cassidy who brewed the tea and poured it into cups as her friend sat in a chair trying to get her tears under control. She dabbed her face with a handkerchief. The doctor came to see Mama this morning, Emily said, her voice hoarse. A sickness of her lungs. She will be bedridden for years, if not the rest of her life. Oh, no, Cassidy exclaimed, shocked. That's terrible, Emily. I am so sorry. She knew Emily's mother had never been a robust woman, and the death of her husband had taken its toll over the years. She tried to imagine her own mother bedridden for life and blinked away the image. There's nothing that can be done for her, she asked, taking the pot and cups to the table. Not unless a cure is discovered. Emily sniffled into her handkerchief. And that isn't likely. You know what this means, Cass? Cassidy sat down, stirring a few dollops of milk into her tea. What? I cannot go west to marry Wyatt. Emily broke into fresh weeping, sobbing into her hands. Cassidy immediately rose to hurry to Emily. She squatted awkwardly by her chair and hugged Emily as she cried. That's not true, Em, she said. You just get on that train and go to Colorado, marry the man. You don't understand, Emily sobbed. I must look after Mother. My brothers and sister, too. They can't go to school and care for her, too. They're too young. Reality dawned on Cassidy, knowing that Emily was right. Without anyone to care for her, Emily's mother would languish in her bed, helpless. Emily's young brothers and sister could not possibly care for their stricken mother. They were only 8, 10 and 14 years old. Oh, Emily, Cassidy said, squeezing her friend's hand. I'm so sorry. I am, too, Emily replied, and tried to get her tears under control. My whole life is ruined now. Cassidy had nothing to say to that. Emily's mother, if she remained bedridden for years, would require care that only Emily could give. Thank God, they aren't poverty-stricken as well. At least they have money to see them through. Maybe your Wyatt will move here, Cassidy ventured. If you care for one another, maybe you can still marry, and still look after your mother. Emily lifted her face from Cassidy's dress to smile wanly. And ask him to give up his dreams of a cattle ranch, Cass? There's not much room for a cattle ranch in Philadelphia. I'm so sorry, Em. Will you pour me fresh tea, please? Nodding, Cassidy rose to pour hot tea into Emily's cup, then sat back down at the table. Will you write to him and tell him, then? She asked. Actually, I've been thinking. Emily stirred her tea and watched Cassidy closely. Maybe you should marry him in my place. Cassidy almost dropped her cup. What? It makes perfect sense. You need an escape, and he needs a wife. Emily, Cassidy retorted, it's not just that I don't want to marry that monster, I'm not ready to marry at all. And he has affection for you, not me. Emily offered her a tiny smile. But he'd take one look at you and fall head over heels in love. You have much to offer a man, Cass. He's looking for a wife. Go to Colorado. Get to know him. I know you'll love him, as I feel I do. He's sweet, and honest, and caring. Just explain to him what happened, and who you are, and he'll give you a chance. I'm sure of it. Cassidy stared at her tea. Colorado is so far away, she whispered. I'll miss you. You'd have missed me, anyway, had my circumstances not changed. I'll give you the train ticket. It leaves the day after tomorrow. Emily, Cassidy protested, but she had no idea what else she might say. I can't stand to see you marry Bollinger, Emily said, her tone now firm. Give Colorado and Wyatt a chance. If you go there, and you hate it, then at least you tried. You can always not marry him and come back here. If your father cannot forgive you, then you can live with me until you find a man you do wish to marry. How about that? I need a little time to think it over, Cassidy said, feeling overwhelmed and more than a little nervous. Do that. Emily nodded, then sipped her tea. I know I will feel better knowing you are in good hands out there. Chapter 4. Nervous and anxious, Wyatt waited at the train station, unable to stop glancing down the tracks every few moments. Dressed in his best black frock coat, white shirt, black tie, and trousers, he paced the platform in his freshly polished boots. Other folks from Pine Ridge also awaited the train for its passengers and the mail, gossiping as they sat on benches outside the station building, or speaking in small groups with one another. Catching a glimpse of smoke in the mountains to the east, Wyatt caught his breath. The train with Emily on it was only a few miles away. Taking his handkerchief from his pocket, he shined his already shiny boots, inspected his clothing for dirt, and removed his hat to comb his fingers through his shaggy blonde hair. Replacing his hat, he glanced at the smoke in the distance once more, then began to pace again. Boy, you're as agitated as a long-tailed cat in a roomful of rockin' chairs. Wyatt glanced up as the town marshal, Slim Packard, ambled toward him, and grinned sheepishly. I reckon I am, Slim. My bride is on that train. Slim's silver brow over icy blue right eye rose. That's so? They bring brides on trains these days? Sure do. I've been corresponding with a young lady from Philadelphia for the last couple months. She agreed to marry me. Slim reached out his hand to shake Wyatt's. Congratulations, boy. I'm right happy to hear that. Just how do you find a woman to marry from that far away? A mail-order bride agency, Wyatt answered, sneaking another glance at the smoke, now considerably closer. I answered an advert a while ago. Emily and I have been writing every week since. Don't that beat all? Slim shook his mane of silver and black hair. How times have changed. Used to be you'd meet a likely gal in person, court her, then ask her to marry you. Wyatt chuckled. I suppose that still works in places where there are young women to meet. That ain't exactly the way it is here in Pine Ridge. Yup. I reckon you're right. You still aiming to start a ranch, boy? Wyatt cocked his head as he heard the train's whistle. He judged it to be around the bend in the mountains. Yup, saving my cash. Maybe buy some land in a year or so. Sure, I'm glad to have May helping me out. Slim nodded and spat a chew of tobacco on the wooden planks. She's a very kind woman, your aunt. The old baker place just went on the market is why I asked. I'm told it's going dirt cheap. Might be time to start negotiating with the bank. That's that spread west of here, ain't it? Wyatt asked, his interest perked. Prime land for grazing cattle. Yup. Just thought to put a bug in your ear about it, boy. Now, I'll leave you alone to greet your intended. Just make sure to bring her by. I'd like to meet her. Wyatt shook his hand. I sure will. As Slim ambled away to chat with other folks, Wyatt gazed at the approaching train, now visible down the tracks, smoke boiling from its stack. Its whistle blew another strident note, announcing its arrival into the station. Folks stood up or strode toward it, but Wyatt remained where he was. Taller than most, he could see clearly as the train chuffed into Pine Ridge. With a hiss of steam and the chugging of its wheels, the train churned to a stop at the platform. Porters jumped down to open doors, permitting passengers to disembark, then started unloading luggage, boxes, and satchels. His heart in his throat, Wyatt watched as people stepped off the train, greeting those who stood there waiting for them. Others looked as if they were merely stretching their legs before getting back on to continue their journey. There. A single young woman, unaccompanied by anyone, stepped down, her gaze searching the people at the station, no doubt looking for someone. Wyatt swallowed hard, his throat dry. If that was Emily, she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in his life. She was of medium height with a tiny waist he could fit both hands around, and her red hair was piled beneath a small, flowered hat. She wore a gown of light gold trimmed in brown. Making his way toward her, wending his way through the crowd, Wyatt watched her hesitate, her fascinating brown eyes meeting his. Her skin was like fine porcelain, a faint flush to her cheeks gave them color, and her full lips offered him a tentative smile as he reached her. "Miss Evans?" he asked, his voice slightly hoarse. "Yes. You must be Mr. Thomas." She offered her hand for him to shake, and in his stunned awe of her beauty and natural poise, he almost forgot to take it. Yes, ma'am." Remembering his manners at last, Wyatt snatched his hat from his head. "I am right glad to meet you at last, Miss Evans." She glanced aside, her blush darkening, as she licked her lips. "I suppose you should call me, Emily," she said quietly. "Might I address you as Wyatt?" "Why, yes, ma'am," he stammered. "I mean, Emily." "I must say," she said, gazing up into his face. "You are more handsome than I had anticipated. And you are beautiful, ma'am, Emily. A man's dream come true." Her tinkling laughter sounded like music to his ears. "Well, I don't know about that. But thank you for the compliment." "Of course." Wyatt finally found his tongue. "May I carry your belongings?" "Yes, thank you. I see they are the only ones left sitting there." For large canvas satchels sat on the platform beside the train, more than what he had anticipated she might bring. He still managed to collect them all and lug them to the waiting buggy, hitched to a small, but well-bred black horse. After helping her up onto the high seat, Wyatt lingered over her hand, gazing up at her. "I've made arrangements for us to be married 2 days from now," he said. "I hope that appeals to you." Emily glanced away from his face, blushing. "I would like some time to get to know you, Wyatt," she said, her voice low and her eyes averted. "I hope you can understand." Wyatt's heart jolted for a moment, and his face fell. "I am, sure, Emily. I think that's reasonable. After all, we only know each other through correspondence." "Thank you, Wyatt. You're very kind." Walking around the buggy, he climbed up and sat beside her. Picking up the reins, he replied, "I do try to be." Chapter 5. Hank Wolf stood on the far side of his horse, pretending to adjust a strap and watching the Pine Ridge town marshal stroll past. The lawman paused to spit tobacco on the wide dirt street, then continued without a glance in Hank's direction. Breathing a fraction easier, Hank eyed Ray, who tied his horse to the rail, and jerked his head toward the saloon. "Let's go in and have a drink," Hank said. "I gotta get out of this sun." Ray nodded. "I could use a beer." Together, they strolled down the wooden sidewalk toward the saloon where piano music drifted from its batwing doors. Hank tipped his hat to a few matrons ambling in the opposite direction and kept a wary eye out for other lawmen. Cowboys rode past them in the street, revolvers in holsters at their hips, Winchester rifles in scabbards tied to their saddles. Big draft horses pulled heavy wagons down the street, but Hank's eye was suddenly caught by a buggy heading their way at a quick trot. An incredibly beautiful woman sat within it, her red hair gleaming. Huge eyes in a sweet face captivated him. He stared at her as the buggy, drawn by a black horse, came abreast of him and Ray. Ray, too, gaped as the small carriage bore down on them. Hank's eyes roved to the man sitting beside her, his hands on the reins, and his jaw dropped. "Lord a mercy," he breathed, staring as the man and woman in the buggy passed them by. "I don't believe it." "What, Pa?" Hank glanced quickly around for any unwanted attention. He lowered his voice. "That be Wyatt Thomas, boy." Ray's eyes went round. "Glory be. Come on." Entering the saloon, Hank led the way to a small table in the corner. The piano player sang a merry tune as he played, grinning at the barmaid. She detached herself from the side of the piano and ambled, her hips swinging, toward Hank and Ray. "What'll you have?" she drawled. "Beer," Hank answered, by habit slumping in his chair to be less noticeable. She wandered away as Ray plucked coins from his pocket. "You sure that was him, Pa?" "I'll never forget 'im, boy," Hank replied, pondering how his long search for Bill Thomas's son was now over. That was him, all right. Then we should follow him. See if he still has that map. Hank nodded thoughtfully but didn't speak as the barmaid brought 2 tall mugs of foaming beer. Ray paid her, watching her hips swing as she wended her way among the tables back to the piano and the player. Bill kept that map secret, Hank said, taking a long pull from his beer. Only him and me knew of it. Ol' Wyatt there, he may not realize what he has. If he don't, Ray said, his voice anxious, he might just have thrown it away. Hank's eyes hardened. If he did, he'll regret that soon enough. I aim to have it back, at any cost. Why would he hang on to an old map? Ray asked. Hank eyed him sourly. He had kept the knowledge of his son's existence a secret all these 20 years, not wanting or needing an enemy using his son against him. Though he never married the boy's ma, Ray meant everything to him. After she died, when Ray was still a youngster, Hank paid a pair of old biddies to look after him and treat him right. He'd stop in a few times a year to see him, and after the Wolf gang fell apart with the arrests of Jack Travers and Milt Hansen, Hank took Ray from the old biddies. Though they looked similar with the same dirty blonde hair and blue eyes, Ray got his more refined and handsome appearance from his mother, and his wide smile had made many a lady cast him a second glance. Unfortunately, sometimes Ray wasn't so quick on the uptake. Not that he was stupid, by any means, but sometimes it took him a tad longer to understand things. He might have done just that, boy, Hank admitted, forcing himself to be patient. But that Wyatt, he loved his pa. I do believe he'd hang on to a useless piece of leather if it reminded him of Bill. Ray eyed the barmaid sidelong, who sang along with the piano player in a voice that sounded like a cat's screech. He must live around here, then. Maybe that gal was his wife. Hank nodded. She sure were a looker. Hank's thoughts ranged back to that day when, in his panic over shooting the woman and Bill's challenge to his authority, he had shot Bill. In his rage and fear, he and the others bolted. It wasn't until late the following day that he remembered the map was in Bill's saddlebags, not his own. By the time he, Jack, and Milt had gone back, they found Bill's grave and Wyatt nowhere to be found. I never shoulda left that map in Bill's bags, he muttered, drinking his beer. Bad mistake, that. How much money is buried, Pa? Ray asked. I mean, if we offer to share it with Wyatt, maybe he'll give it over. I ain't sharing that loot with Bill's kid, Hank grumbled, annoyed at the suggestion. Nope, we'll find where he lives and take it from him. If he tries to stop me, well. A nasty grin split Hank's weathered and creased face. He'll get the same as his old man. A bullet. Chapter 6. In a whirlwind of emotions, Cassidy sat in the buggy beside Wyatt, wondering what to do. All through the long and exhausting train ride, she had been determined to tell Wyatt everything, Emily's decision to remain at home and her own need to escape a horrible marriage. She would inform him that she would not require anything from him save directions to the nearest hotel. Weary beyond belief, she exited the train to find this handsome young man with the sweetest, kindest smile she had ever seen waiting for her. His looks disarmed her completely, his charm entranced her, and she found herself unable to deny she was Emily Evans. Though normally a standoffish sort of woman, Cassidy liked him immediately, felt enormously comfortable with him, and was enthralled as he spoke of his dreams of a sprawling cattle ranch. She chastised herself silently for not telling him who she was straight away, but she was worried. What if he rejected her? Wanted nothing to do with her? She found the possibility quite unpleasant. She liked this man, she wanted to see where this could take her. Perhaps Emily was right, and she'd fall in love with Wyatt, too. I discovered that a piece of prime land recently came on the market, he was saying as she focused on him again. After we're wed, I plan to talk to the bank. They're more apt to listen to a married man than a single feller. Cassidy tried to find a smile for him. That would be good. Wyatt eyed her sidelong, his smile vanishing. Is something wrong? I'm just very tired, she replied, gazing up at him. My, he certainly is muscular. A very husky man. I like that. It was a very long trip from Philadelphia. He grinned, sheepish. And here I am, running my mouth like a plumb fool. You must think poor of me, Emily. Flinching at the name, Cassidy shook her head. No, not at all. I like listening to you talk. That bit of truth flowed from her mouth without her thinking. It was true, she did like listening to him, enjoyed his drawl, found his accent disarming. It did nothing to make her wonder at his intelligence, for she could tell immediately he was a very smart man. I like the way you talk, too, he said, meeting her eyes. You have a twang in your voice I ain't never heard before. And you have a pleasing country drawl. The ride to Aunt May's house was not a long one, and soon Cassidy found herself gazing at a big sprawling ranch house on 10 acres with a small herd of cattle grazing, a few goats in a pen near the barn, chickens, ducks and geese pecking the ground and a low-roofed shed that contained pigs. A woman hoed rows for planting in a big garden and straightened as Wyatt reined the black buggy to a halt in the yard. Trepidation filled Cassidy as Wyatt helped her down from the buggy. In her guilt at deceiving Wyatt, she felt certain his aunt would take one look at her and denounce her for a liar and an impersonator. Wyatt held her arm lightly as he guided her toward the woman, her belly filled with a wriggling sensation, and she nearly demanded Wyatt return her to town. Aunt May smiled as warmly as Wyatt had as he introduced them, and she embraced Cassidy in welcome, kissing her on the cheek. My dear Emily, it is so wonderful to meet you at last. Cassidy tried to return the smile, her nervousness not assuaged in the slightest. Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. May, please. We are to be relations soon, you know. With hair almost as red as Cassidy's, yet streaked with gray, May's hazel eyes held not just warmth and friendliness, but a sharp wit and intelligence that Cassidy feared instantly. She'll hate me once she finds out. I should go now and tell them I can't marry him, and just go. May looped her arm through hers and marched her toward the house. Let me show you to the guest room, she said, chatting away happily. Wyatt can bring your things. I can tell you're very tired, my dear, your eyes say everything. Why don't you just lie down and rest for a while? Did I happen to mention that you're a very beautiful girl? Despite her weariness and guilt and worry, Cassidy gazed around at the interior of the house with awe. The wide living room held wood furniture covered in cowhide, and the tables made of light, mellow wood seemed to glow of their own accord. A huge fireplace with the hearth built of fieldstone dominated one entire wall. Pillars made of polished tree trunks held up the huge beams above. This is lovely, she murmured. May gazed around. My husband built it. I had hoped to pass it on to my children, but I fear I never bore a child. She showed Cassidy the dining room just off the kitchen, and 4 huge bedrooms lay beyond 2 short hallways. We had hoped for a big family, you see, May explained as she showed Cassidy her own room. It held a large comfortable-looking bed covered in a patchwork quilt, a bureau, an armoire, a table with a lamp and a chair, and a small wood stove to keep the occupant warm on an icy Colorado winter night. This is all so splendid, Cassidy said as she stepped inside. Her own room in Philadelphia was just as big but hadn't the simple charm this room did. Even in here, polished trunks held up the beams, adding to the country charm, and her window overlooked the craggy Rocky Mountains. If she sat at the desk, she would be able to gaze up at their majesty, listen to the whispering pines, and imagine herself walking among them on a summer's day. As Wyatt carried her luggage in, May said, "The nights are still cool enough that you'll need extra blankets. I'll make sure you have them. If you need the stove lit, just ask Wyatt. Thank you so much for your kindness." May waved off her gratitude. "We're almost family now. Why don't you unpack later, and lie down now? Supper will be in a few hours. I hope you like roast pork." Cassidy smiled. "One of my favorites." "Good." May ushered Wyatt out, who struggled to catch Cassidy's eye and smile at her as May said, "Let her be, son, can't you see she's exhausted?" May closed the door behind them, leaving Cassidy to stare after them, and her guilt rose to nudge her hard. "What have I done?" she moaned, sitting down on the edge of the bed. I should never have done this. Pacing around the room, restless, she thought about unpacking, doing something to occupy her mind, to help her not dwell on her predicament. Instead, the bed looked far too inviting, and her exhaustion was overwhelming. I'll just lie down for a few minutes, she muttered. I bet I won't sleep, though. That was a bet she lost. She woke in the room without the sun's rays streaming through, yet it was not quite dark. The knock at the door that had awakened her came again. Come in, she called, sitting up, covering her mouth as she yawned. May peered around the door. Supper is ready if you're hungry, she said. I have warm water in the kitchen for washing your face and hands. Cassidy's stomach rumbled, and she remembered her last meal of stale bread on the train that morning. She tried to smile around another huge yawn. Yes, I'll be there straight away. May nodded and closed the door. Rising, Cassidy gazed down at her sleep-wrinkled gown and opened one of her satchels. Picking the dress on top, she eyed it critically, but as it was green silk it didn't display nearly the crumpled appearance of the one she currently wore. Changing quickly, she unbound her hair and brushed it out. Hoping they wouldn't mind her hair being down at the supper table, she didn't take the time to bind it back up. Peeking cautiously around the kitchen door, she found May busy preparing the meal, while Wyatt collected plates, silverware, and napkins to take to the dining room. Both paused to gape at her as she emerged into view. She began, self-conscious under their stares. Where do I wash? May pointed. Right there, dear. You do know we don't dress all formal for supper, don't you? I'm sorry, Cassidy replied, embarrassed, her face burning. It's what I'm used to. May waved her hand. I'm afraid you'll find us to be a rather sloppy family, dear. Wyatt, shut your jaw, quit staring, and set the table. Cassidy observed his admiring grin as he passed her in the doorway, pausing to whisper, I like it. You're beautiful. Then he was gone, leaving Cassidy to blush for an entirely different reason. Striding to the wash water, she soaped and rinsed her hands, then splashed water over her face. May I help? She asked, drying her hands and face, not knowing what to do. At home, servants took care of the serving and the washing up afterward. Not tonight, dear, May said, bustling around the kitchen. Tonight, you're our guest. She paused to eye Cassidy's gown critically. I do hope you brought more casual attire, dear. It'll be rather hard to see you help feed the stock in a silk dress. Chapter 7. It grew more and more apparent to Wyatt that Emily knew absolutely nothing about life on a ranch. He reminded himself time and again that she came from a big city, and naturally would not have a clue about horses, cattle, or pigs. Yet, none of her clothes were suitable for a rancher's wife, and all had no doubt been tailor-made and were very expensive. In addition, simple household chores like cooking, cleaning, feeding animals or working in a garden were like a foreign language to Emily. Recalling her letters, Wyatt found no reference at all to Emily being born into money. As he studied her unobtrusively, it became clear to him that a silver spoon had ruled Emily's world, that servants had fed, clothed, and cleaned up after her all her life. And now, she felt at a total loss in trying to fit in with himself and May. But outside of her incredible beauty, Wyatt also recognized a strength of character, an iron resolve and a determined tenacity to see things through. Admiring her pluck even as he admired her looks, Wyatt felt drawn to her, liked her company, and enjoyed gazing into her cinnamon-colored eyes. Though he spent much of her first week in Pine Ridge working at the hardware store, he daydreamed of her, and wondered when he might raise the subject of their marriage again. May warned him against it. Give her time, Wyatt, she said, sitting with him on the porch as Emily walked in the loaming toward the barn as the sun set, turning her head to gaze up toward the steep mountains. She's still finding her feet, and not liking the slippery slope she's on. If you put pressure on her now, she might bolt. Wyatt nodded slowly. She's not how she described herself in her letters. She never told me she came from money, yet she clearly does. She's different, somehow. I can see why she might not inform you about her background, May told him. She doesn't know that you won't press that advantage. As for the rest, well, what you see on paper and what is in front of you are two different things. Please don't pressure her, son. I won't. He grinned at May. It's not like I have the ranch built and cradles ready for babies. I have time and can give her all she needs. May peered at him through the near darkness. Do you like her? Quite a little. Wyatt watched Emily lean against the corral fence and gaze at the horses, her shape almost lost as darkness crept across the land. He saw her jump when the coyotes yipped and yapped, announcing their nightly hunt. She's soft, yet tough, May, beautiful and also vulnerable. I know I could fall head over heels for her. Good. I like her, too. Teaching her basic farm skills won't be easy, but I think I'm up for the challenge. Standing, Wyatt bent to kiss her cheek. I'm going to walk with her. I think we should have a little time alone. Good idea. Wyatt walked down the porch steps and crossed the yard toward the barn. He made no secret of his coming, yet Emily yelped like one of the coyotes and spun around as he reached her. Easy, he said, his tone soothing. I just thought we might spend a little time together. Emily crept close to him. Were those wolves I just heard? She asked, a tremor in her voice. Them? Nah. Them were just coyotes. Cousins to the wolf, maybe, but not nearly as dangerous. He grinned. Unless you're a prairie bird. Emily chuckled. In Philadelphia, we have so much noise, it's hard to hear yourself even think. It's so quiet out here, it's spooky. Wyatt leaned his back against the fence and hooked his boot heel over the lower rung. I bet I'd be twice as scared in Philadelphia than you are here. A hunting owl floated low overhead, Emily tracking its flight and soft hoots with interest. That don't scare you? Wyatt asked, curious. Emily's teeth gleamed as she smiled. It's an owl. Owls are supposed to be messengers, I've heard. And anyway, there are no tales of them carrying off small children. Wyatt chuckled. No, I reckon not. Owls are helpful critters, kill rats, mice, snakes. I saw an owl carrying off a 4-foot rattler once. As thick around as my wrist. Rattlesnakes? You have rattlesnakes out here? For a wild moment, Wyatt thought she was going to flee to the house and haul her luggage out that very second. He observed her huge eyes and tense posture, and pitched his voice low, soothing. Well, yeah, but them are shy critters, Emily. You have to just about step on one to get bit. Don't worry about them none. The barn cats keep Em away from the barn and house. He felt her relax a fraction. I have always been afraid of snakes, she whispered. Dreamed of them crawling into my bed while I slept, biting me. Now, Emily, he said, daring to take her hand in his. That don't happen, 'cept in dreams. Snakes are mostly shy, more afraid of you. We got pretty near tame snakes around here. They don't bite, hey, they don't even have teeth. But they keep the place clear of rodents who can carry disease. He felt her relax. Really? I never heard of helpful snakes. Just the ones who take you to the devil. There ain't no such thing, he said, his tone mild, soothing. Snakes be God's critters, too. They ain't evil, and they can be darn helpful. Her fingers coiled around his. Maybe you can teach me how to not be afraid of snakes. I'd be proud to. But even though some snakes won't harm you, I'll teach you how to avoid the kind that can, under the right circumstances. I'd appreciate that. Wyatt tried to read her expression in the near dark, but she had turned her face toward the mountains. They are majestic, aren't they? She murmured. Yes, ma'am, they are. I was right impressed with them myself when I came here. Her pale features, a blur in the dark, turned toward him. Where are you from? Panic choked his throat. Though now seemed the perfect time to inform her of his past, before they got too close, to offer her a chance to go home to her wealthy family back east, Wyatt couldn't do it. He didn't dare tell her he had run with a rough outlaw gang, robbed banks, and watched his father die a violent death. Coughing and clearing his throat, he said, New Mexico, mostly. Spent some time in Arizona with my ma. Where is she? She done passed away when I was 16, he said, staring at the rising moon. I'm sorry. She was a good woman. Gave me a good swatting when I needed it. I bet I would have liked her. I doubt that. She were a saloon gal, and the wealthy types tend to look down on her kind. She were a good Christian woman, Wyatt said slowly. Give you the shirt off her back and her last piece of bread if you was hungry. Raised me on her own. Where's your father? Wyatt stared at the stars. He's gone, too. All my family that's left be right there in that house yonder. Emily stared up with him. You know, Wyatt, she said, her tone low. I have my parents back in Philadelphia, yet I think you are more fortunate with your folks than I. What? They don't care about you? She laughed low in her throat. They care. But not in the way you think. Wyatt cocked his head but didn't voice his thoughts aloud. He recalled in her letters that her father had passed away a few years back, and that her mother wasn't a well person. So, what's this talk of parents in the plural? He didn't question her, but instead continued on without a hitch. I reckon we all get lucky in some regards, not so much in others. That is very true. In the dim light through the windows, Wyatt watched May get up from her chair and enter the house. She always went to bed early, ready to rise just before dawn to fix breakfast and begin the day's work. He wondered if Emily would be able to learn such habits, knowing that she had servants to care for such mundane matters as breakfast and chores. Then he bit his lip, knowing that was unfair. Emily did her best to also get up early and help his aunt. Perhaps we should get on back, he said, lifting himself from the fence. Let these horses get their sleep. I am trying, Wyatt, she said softly. I'm trying to learn. Did she just read my mind? I know, Emily, he replied, and I appreciate what you're doing. I know I ain't what you're used to, not the beau you probably plan to marry one day. She laughed. No. You certainly are a far cry from the man I was supposed to marry. Walking back toward the house, the cool mountain breeze ruffling through their hair, Wyatt said, expect he was a young buck, with coat-tails and fine horses, and smoked a cigar. Probably drank port or some such fancy liquor. Emily shook her head, pausing to look at his face. One day I'll tell you about him. Not just now, all right? That's fine. I sure don't need my tail feathers ruffled over a rival. I got to work tomorrow. Emily laughed and rested her hand briefly on his wrist. Good night, Wyatt. Good night, Emily. Standing in the yard, he watched her climb the porch steps and open the screen door, letting herself into the house. She vanished as she crossed the front room, and he turned away to gaze up at the stars. What do you think, Pa? He asked. You like her? I sure do. Full of all sorts of surprises. After taking the time to walk around the place to make sure the stock had settled in for the night, the water tanks were full, and the foxes couldn't get into the chicken coop, Wyatt finally went into the house. The lamps were turned down low, and both women slept behind their closed doors. He took a bottle of whiskey down from a kitchen cabinet and poured himself a shot. Tossing it down, he then sat on the sofa to stare into the cold fireplace. I still miss you, Pa, he murmured. I wish you could see me now. I'll do you proud, I swear I will. Chapter 8. Now you know what he looks like, boy? Ray nodded, his eyes on the entrance to the hardware store. Yeah. What do you want me to do? Just check him out for now, Hank replied. He knows me, so I can't go in. Try to get him to talk, maybe see if he'll tell you where he's living. Buy a small bag of horseshoe nails, we need 'em anyway. You got it. Settling his hat on his head, Ray ambled across the street, hesitating long enough to let a pair of cowboys ride past, then stepped up onto the sidewalk. Tipping his hat to a pair of older ladies striding toward him, he opened the door and walked in. The blond-haired Wyatt Thomas glanced at him with a smile as he continued to wait on a farmer busy purchasing roofing supplies. "Be right with you," he said. Ray nodded, wandering about looking at the items for sale, observing Thomas from the corner of his eye. The feller was a big one, wearing an apron over his shirt and trousers, scribbling down the farmer's order on paper. He didn't appear very dangerous to Ray, even if his deceased pa had a reputation for being a mean son of a buck. To Ray, Thomas looked just like he was, a clerk. At last, the farmer paid for his items. "Drive your wagon around back, and I'll help you load up," Thomas told him. The farmer waved his hand in response, then walked outside. Thomas looked to Ray. "Help you?" Ray ambled to the counter. "I need a small bag of horseshoe nails." Wyatt went to a shelf and pulled down a box. "That'll be 6 bits, sir." As Ray dug the coins from his pocket, and then asked in what he thought was a friendly manner, "You live around here?" "Yup." Thomas took his money and put it away, then gazed expectantly at Ray, as he continued to stand there. "Is there something else you needed?" No," Ray answered, flummoxed. "I reckon not." Taking the box, he left the store, knowing he failed in his task. Never being one for social niceties, he truly had no idea how to get a stranger to open up about himself. Hoping his pa wouldn't be mad about his failure, Ray walked back across the street. "Well?" Hank asked, taking the horseshoe nails to put in his saddlebags. "He just weren't very talkative, Pa." Ray felt shame rising to heat his cheeks, knowing he disappointed his father. "He never was one to run his mouth," Hank answered, gazing at the hardware store. "He don't have the grit his ol' man did." "No," Ray said, eager and happy his pa wasn't mad. "He's just a clerk." "We'll have to ask around town a little," Hank told him, untying his horse from the rail. "Try not to raise suspicion, though. Do it real quiet, like." Hank mounted his horse, Ray following suit. "Where we going, Pa?" "Two strangers in town without any business to attend to attract attention," Hank replied, guiding his mount down the street. "We don't want to have any eyes on us, wondering what we're up to." Trotting his horse, Ray caught up to him quickly, then rode at his side. "Maybe some of the farmers and ranchers around here know him," he said, his voice low. "We can pretend to be old friends looking for him." "Possible," Hank replied, gazing around as he always did. "But I reckon they'll direct us to the store, not his house. Then tonight when he heads home, let's just follow him. I just hope he don't see us." Ray fell silent. "What if no one talks to us?" "We'll find the right one who will. People always like to gossip about other people, it's the way of things." Chapter 9. Feeling very much out of her depth, Cassidy tossed a bucket of food scraps over the short fence to the pigs, watching them snuffle the ground for the food, grunting with eagerness. There were 3 sows and a hoary boar, with a bunch of squealing piglets. She never thought she'd find pigs adorable, but the little babies running around and nursing on their mother certainly were cute in her opinion. Still, the youngsters could not lift her spirits this day, so deeply sunk into her own misery as she was. "I never should have done this. Emily was wrong. She could make this transition easily, but I can't. I should admit failure, go home, and marry that horrible Bollinger. I may be unhappy with him, but at least I won't be burning dinner and feeding the disaster to the pigs." Turning away from the happy pigs, Cassidy gazed up at the mountains, listening to the wind whisper through the pines. "But can I leave such beauty?" she murmured. "This country is spectacular." "Yes, it is." Cassidy spun around, dropping the bucket with a clang. May had strolled up behind her as she wallowed in her unhappiness, startling her. "May." The older woman nodded toward the mountains. "They can be harsh and unforgiving," May said. "The winters can be the devil, and yet stunningly beautiful. Living here is worth every risk, I believe." Cassidy bent to pick up the bucket. "I don't belong here." May offered her a long measuring look. "You're thinking to leave and go home to Philadelphia?" I'm not used to this, May, Cassidy went on, avoiding May's eyes. I'm not learning fast enough, it's not fair to you or Wyatt. Stepping past her, May leaned on the fence, her back to Cassidy. Do you like Wyatt? Of course, I do, Cassidy replied quickly. That's not the issue. The issue is that you're terribly unhappy. I can see that you are. Before you make any decisions, just know this. Wyatt is falling in love with you, anyone with eyes can see it. And as far as being fair to him and me, we decide what's fair or not. I love you, too, Emily, and I know you are very good for him. I don't mind helping you learn to cook or sew. If you are still willing to learn, that is. Cassidy stared at the back of her head. I don't know what to do, she whispered. May turned around with a smile. Then if I may offer a suggestion, just stay a while longer. Keep trying, and don't give up. Give Wyatt a chance, give me a chance. And if I am still unhappy? Cassidy asked. If I don't share the same feelings as Wyatt? Then at least you tried, May told her with a smile. And I'll put you on the train to Philadelphia myself. Cassidy returned her smile. All right. Why don't we go into town and get you some clothes that I won't feel guilty seeing you in when you feed the swine? Actually laughing, Cassidy agreed. I'd like that. Realizing that most of her unhappiness had stemmed from her guilt over deceiving Wyatt and May as to her identity, Cassidy came close to admitting the truth as she and May drove the buggy into Pine Ridge. She held back, worried that May would denounce her and demand she leave her home. Though Cassidy was strongly considering that very thing, she hardly wished to be thrown out. I'll give it a while longer, then maybe go to Denver. I wanted to see a little of the world anyway. At the general store, Cassidy and May looked at dresses made of sturdy cotton, more easily cleaned than the silks and satins that Cassidy had brought with her from home. She liked the styles and the colors that went well with her hair and eyes and selected 4 of them. She would not permit May to pay for them, as she had brought some money with her from Philadelphia. I insist on buying you these. May presented her with a heart-shaped pendant, gold with a small red jewel in the exact center. Stunned by the gift, Cassidy let May fasten it around her neck, gazing at her in astonishment. You really shouldn't. You really shouldn't argue with me, May replied calmly. That looks lovely on you. Gazing into a mirror the clerk held up for her, Cassidy had to agree. The red and gold certainly set off her eyes. It's beautiful, May. Thank you. You're very welcome. Now why don't we put these dresses in the buggy and pay a call on Wyatt? As this was her first real visit to Pine Ridge, Cassidy looked at the plain clapboard structures, the farmers, ranchers, or their wives and a flurry of children, who went about their business in the town. It's so much different than the big city, she said. So different. Quieter. That it is, May agreed as they walked. Here, people look out for one another, take care of each other in bad times. I doubt you find that in Philadelphia. No, you don't. A man strolled toward them, and Cassidy's eyes went straight to the badge on his tan vest. He wasn't especially tall, but he was imposing, with silver and black hair and eyes the color of the sun on icy branches. He greeted them warmly enough, smiling at May with real pleasure. He took off his hat, offering them a bow. Slim, May said, gesturing toward Cassidy, this is Emily Evans who is staying with us. Emily, this is our town marshal, Slim Packard. Cassidy offered him her hand, which he immediately bent over, pressing a light kiss to her knuckles. A real pleasure, ma'am, he said in a strong drawl. I done heard rumors of a beauty from back east coming to our little burg, but I scarce to believe it. But them rumors be true. Blushing furiously at his compliment, Cassidy smiled, permitting him to continue holding her hand. Very kind of you to say, Marshal. Call me Slim, ma'am, he said. Pert near everyone does. Where might you lovely ladies be heading, and might I escort you there? May chuckled. Just down to the hardware store to visit Wyatt. Happens I'm going that way myself. Thus, with Slim in tow, Cassidy and May continued on down the street, Slim nattering on about the town and pointing out a few prominent members of the community, like the mayor's wife and the preacher's wife walking together on the opposite side of the street. "Them two will jaw your ears off if you let 'em," Slim confided to Cassidy in a loud whisper, making her laugh. "Like you won't?" May asked, her brow arched. Slim put his hand over his badge, gazing at her, affronted. "Now, May, why would you say a hurtful thing like that? You're one of the worst gossips this town has ever seen," she retorted. "Why, I be just reportin' the news." Cassidy covered her mouth to still her laughter as Slim opened the door and bowed them through. Wyatt glanced over his shoulder from where he stood on a ladder, adding items to the shelves above him. "Hello," he said, his grin wide. Cassidy's heart beat a little harder upon seeing him, his refreshing sincerity, his uncomplicated personality. Being here reminded her of how much she liked his company and enjoyed seeing him smile at her as though he liked her for herself, not for the money her father had. "He doesn't even know my father has such a great sum of money. I'd like to keep it that way." "We came to town to shop," May said as he climbed down the ladder. "And somehow picked up this little flea here." "Who you callin' a flea?" Slim demanded. "And here I am, being civil to walk the ladies down these very dangerous streets. Why, they could have been accosted by thieves." Wyatt kissed first May on the cheek, then Cassidy. "Sure, Slim," he replied with a grin, "Pine Ridge has one thief, and he's a mongrel who steals food that you let run loose. I just can't catch him is all. Not like I ain't tryin'. Cassidy met Wyatt's sweet blue eyes, sharing a smile that seemed to connect them in a way that she had never felt before. She tried to picture his expression if or when she told him she shouldn't marry him and wanted to leave Pine Ridge, and she just couldn't bring it to her mind. If she did decide to leave, to say goodbye, she also realized she would miss him very much. What does that mean? Am I starting to develop feelings for him? I know I like him very much, but does that lead to love? Cassidy had never been in love before and had nothing to compare her feelings to. Yes, she trusted him. Yes, she felt confident that he would be a good husband to her if she agreed to marry him. Yes, he would be loyal and faithful, a good father to her children. But was all that enough to make her want to marry him? Was it enough to lead her into real love? With May's and Slim's good-natured argument washing over her, Cassidy stepped toward Wyatt and wrapped her fingers in his. "I bought a few new dresses," she said, unsure of what to say to him. "I'd bet you will look beautiful in them," he murmured. Blushing, Cassidy chuckled. "At least, they're a bit more practical for working around the ranch." "Tomorrow is Sunday," he said. "Would you like to take a ride in the buggy with me in the afternoon? Maybe take along a picnic?" Delight coursed through her. "I'd like that very much. We can take a look at that land I've got my eyes on," he continued, eager and happy, his fingers still entwined in hers. "I would love to see it," she replied, his happiness spreading to her, filling her heart. Standing there, gazing up into his eyes, with his entire heart showing deep within them, Cassidy actually hoped he would kiss her. Even knowing May and Slim might watch with curiosity, she didn't care. She wanted to feel his strong hands on her arms, his lips close over hers. For a long moment, she thought he would do exactly that. A customer arriving into the store stole their attention from one another. Wyatt glanced past her to the door, then back. "I'm sorry," he murmured. Oddly, Cassidy knew exactly what he meant. He was sorry he couldn't kiss her, sorry he couldn't be there with her, sorry for having to work at a store instead of being a rancher. She squeezed his fingers, then let his hand drop. "I know." As Wyatt went to wait on the new customer, Cassidy watched him, knowing full well May watched her. At last, she glanced back at her. "Maybe we should let him do his work." May agreed with a smile. "We should get home and start supper in any case." Leaving the store, Cassidy waved at Wyatt in farewell, witnessing his quick grin. Slim accompanied them out the door, holding it for them, and escorted them back to their buggy. "It was mighty fine, seeing you ladies," he said, assisting them up to the seat. He tipped his hat. "I do hope you'll be coming back into town again soon." "I'm sure we will," Cassidy replied as May picked up the reins and slapped the horse's rump. "Do try to behave yourself, Slim," May advised as the black horse trotted down the street. "Always do." Chapter 10. Though Wyatt worried that bad weather might move in and disrupt his plans for a picnic with Emily, his concerns proved unfounded. Sunday dawned sunny and clear, the temperatures mild. Emily was dressed up so pretty, Wyatt had to keep himself from gawking. She wore one of her new dresses, a shade of green and sewn with a kind of gold trim. Around her neck she wore the pendant his aunt had bought her. Her eyes sparkled as Wyatt loaded the basket of food into the buggy after they'd arrived home from church. "There's a little pond in a stream that flows along the property," he said as he assisted her into the small carriage. "Might be a good place for picnic lunch." "It sounds perfect," Emily replied, and her cinnamon eyes on him made his heart flip-flop like a fish in a sack. Waving to May, who stood on the porch watching them go, Wyatt drove the buggy down the lane and toward the main road. Rather than head into town, he turned the horse back toward the mountains along a narrow track just wide enough for the wheels. As they traveled, he tried to point out some of the wildlife they passed. "See there?" he asked, his fingers directing her to a bird flying overhead. "That be a red-tailed hawk." Emily peered up. "It's beautiful. And those are the tracks of a bear. Must have been by this way in the night." "I'm glad I'm safe in the house, then," she said, fingering her pendant. "Now, you don't want to get between a mama bear and her little ones," Wyatt went on. "They be right protective of their babies." "As they should be." Though she didn't speak much, Wyatt found the little silences that fell between them not at all uncomfortable. He felt as though they understood one another without words, sharing small smiles and glances. Enthralled as he was with her beauty, he still found her inner strength of will and character just as attractive. "Tell me a little about the big city," he said as he guided the horse along the tracks, wending its way among huge boulders that lined the trail. It gradually climbed up in altitude amid the thickening pine and evergreens, with the occasional aspen just budding out in spring. Emily gave a tiny shrug. "There's lots to do there," she said, her East Coast accent fascinating him. "Theaters where actors put on plays, restaurants, cafes, museums, art galleries, exhibits." "You mean where you go and look at pictures?" She chuckled. "Paintings as well as sculptures." "Is that the sort of thing you like?" he asked, glancing down at her. "Well, yes, I used to anyway. My friend and I would go quite often." I suspect she liked the art more than I did. "Would you miss not having museums and galleries living way out here?" She gazed out over the mountain they traversed. "There are many things I'd miss," she admitted slowly. "My friend most of all. But there is also much to enjoy here as well. Experiences I might gain that I'd never have gotten by staying there." "And your folks? Would you miss them?" "Not for long." "Interesting." Wyatt clucked to the horse, encouraging the little mare to greater effort as the trail steepened. "Is all this part of the land you hope to buy?" "Sure is." "With all these trees," Emily asked, gesturing, "where do you graze cows?" "I'll show you." At the top of the trail in a wide area, Wyatt reined the horse in. Setting the brake, he jumped down and tied the mare's reins to a tree, then helped Emily down. Taking her by the hand, he led her further on up the path and around the bend. She stopped of her own accord, sucking in a deep breath. When she didn't speak, Wyatt glanced at her. "What do you think?" Wyatt," she stammered. "This is incredible." Beyond the steep slope at their feet lay a wide valley between two tall mountains, a stream sparkling silver under the sunlight to their left. To the right and close under the mountain's shadow stood a ranch house, a big barn and several outbuildings. Lush grasslands just ripe for grazing spread as far as he could see, with higher mountain meadows hidden behind the forest. "The previous owners took sick, left town, and their kids don't want it," Wyatt explained. "Now the bank wants to unload it fast. It don't do them no good sitting here." The start for your dream, Emily said, gazing up at him. He nodded. If I can swing it. Still holding her by the hand, he led Emily back to the carriage. The little pond is a bit further. We can sit in the shade and eat May's delicious sandwiches. Emily sat in the seat as he climbed up beside her. You're making me hungry. I'm making me hungry, too. Unhitching the mare so she could drink and graze, Wyatt eyed Emily as she spread a blanket on the high meadow grass and set out their lunch. He still found some of the things she said contrary to what she had written in her letters, but Wyatt was content to let her tell him in her own time what was what. He wanted no pressure on her, as after last talking with his aunt, he was aware of her doubt, and her need for space. He wasn't about to do anything that might scare her away from the wedding ceremony. He was becoming mighty impatient to make her his wife. She offered him a sandwich and a smile as he sat down, taking a bite of her own as she watched the rushing stream pass them by. I'd wager there's good fishing in that little pond there, Wyatt said, gesturing toward the quiet, deep water that lay at their feet. I should have thought to bring a pole and bait. There's always another time, Emily pointed out. It is so peaceful here. I never imagined such beauty, such quiet, and tranquility. All I hear is the water, and the wind through the trees. Yup, Wyatt agreed. It is peaceful out here. Not many people to come to blather in your ear. She fetched a deep sigh. I could fall in love with this place. Think you could fall in love with me? Emily smiled, blushing faintly. I think I already am. Does that mean I can maybe kiss you now? He inched closer to her, hoping he wasn't putting too much pressure on her. He'd been craving to taste her lips since the moment she stepped off the train. Her smile deepened as did her blush. I would like that very much. Smoothing strands of wispy hair from her face, Wyatt bent his neck to kiss her, his right hand behind her neck, his left hand on her fingers. For a moment, she stiffened as his mouth brushed hers gently, tenderly, then she relaxed and kissed him back, her hand traveling to his shoulder. Powerful emotions swarmed over him, his growing love for her deepening, his worry that she might eventually get back on the train and leave him lessening. At length he lifted his face from hers, gazing into her strangely colored eyes, rubbing her nose with his. I have been wanting you to do that, she whispered. Just as I wanted to. Emily, I'm falling in love with you. I want to marry you. Oddly, she pulled her face and eyes away from him, turning away. Wrapping her arms around her knees, she stared at the pond, her expression unreadable. Emily? Confusion brought up renewed worries that her inability to adapt to small town and ranch life might bring her to leave, to take a train and never return. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched her, fearing the worst. But she said she was falling in love with me. Doesn't that count for something? I'm not sure I'm ready to get married, Wyatt, she said, not looking at him. I wanted to experience things in life before settling down with a husband, children, responsibilities. While her answer wasn't as dreadful as announcing she planned to depart on the next train, it was still a blow to his soul. But your letters said you were ready to marry, that this was what you wanted when you came out here. She finally glanced at him, biting her lower lip. Yes, well, that. I'm sorry if I misled you. Misled? Standing suddenly, Emily started packing up the remains of their picnic. I think we should go back, Wyatt, she told him, adding to his confusion. She was like an entirely different person now, one who had just shut him out, cut him off from her previous warm and loving emotions. Staring at her, Wyatt couldn't believe the sudden change. It was as though he had insulted her by saying he wanted to marry her. Wyatt stood up, too, picking up the blanket and folding it slowly. Yeah, he said, his voice dead. Sure. The very uncomfortable silence on the ride back was palpable, and Wyatt pondered the sudden change in her. He recalled the warm letters he had received, remembered her words that she wanted marriage and babies, recalled how she had answered yes to his proposal of marriage. Suspicions grew in his mind, the thoughts that the Emily in the letters and the Emily sitting silently beside him were two different people. But how could that be? Had she pretended everything she wrote? Slow, deep anger burned in him as he clucked to the horse, setting the mare to a faster pace. Not understanding the deception only added to his growing fears and frustrations, and not knowing what to do about it all only made things worse. Somehow, I have to find the truth. I have to get her to talk to me. Somehow. Chapter 11. Hank and Ray eyed the old woman meandering her way down the sidewalk, leaning heavily on her cane. She seemed to not notice they were there until they stepped into her path. Peering myopically up at them, she opened her mouth as though to berate them for their rudeness. "Excuse me, ma'am," Hank said, his tone polite, sweeping off his hat. "I'm wondering if you might help us." "Help you?" "Help you?" she asked, her voice high and nasal. "Yes, ma'am, we're looking for a friend of ours," Hank said, making his voice as sweet and sincere as he could. "What friend?" she asked suspiciously. "Name's Wyatt Thomas," Hank said. "I want to give him some cows, as I'm leaving the territory, and can't take 'em with me." He chuckled. "I'd like directions to his place, where I can drive the cows." She agreed, nodding her wizened head. "He could use cows, yes sir, his old Aunt May, too." Lovely gal." "Him, too." Hank exchanged a wry glance with Ray. "So, he lives with his Aunt May?" That he does. Lives out yonder, less than a mile out of town, with her." "That way." The old woman pointed. "Giving cows away, huh?" Snorting, she shuffled on down the sidewalk, pushing between them as though they weren't there. "Ain't never heard of cows being given away for free." Muttering to herself and shaking her head, she thumped her way on down the street until she disappeared around a corner. "And that's how we find out where that boy lives," Hank said with satisfaction. "Let's take a ride and check it out." "Would his aunt know you, Pa?" Ray asked as they headed back to their horses. "She don't know my face," Hank replied. "But Ol' Bill woulda told her about me and the gang. She'd know my name. He wanted to quit us, Ol' Bill did, wanted to come stay here with her, help her out. I told him the only way to quit my gang is when we bury you." Swinging into their saddles, Hank and Ray rode slowly until reaching the town boundary, then urged their horses into a swift canter. Just as the old woman said, a small ranch stood at the base of the mountains, just off the road. Reining to a walk, they took a close look at the place as they rode by. 4 or 5 cows grazed while other stock were in pens closer to the barn. "I don't see anyone," Ray said, peering. "It's Sunday," Hank reminded him. "I'll bet they're in church singing hymns or seeing how it's afternoon, they're napping in the house." Trotting on, they rounded a bend in the road as it climbed into the mountains, and Hank reined in fast. A black buggy drawn by a black horse was coming toward them. He saw 2 people in the seat. A sudden flash of insight told him it was Thomas and the gal. "Get out of sight, quick." Turning their horses, they cantered back down the road, then guided their mounts off it to climb the steep slope to a heavy cluster of pine trees that overlooked the road below. Hank and Ray dismounted to kneel at the edge, staring down as the buggy rounded the corner. Sure enough, Thomas and the pretty lady they had seen earlier sat within it, Thomas at the reins. Neither one of them looked up as the small carriage passed them by and vanished in a thin cloud of dust. "That was close," Hank said as the dust slowly drifted back down to earth. "I want to have the upper hand when I confront him about the map." "Looks like they went out for a Sunday drive," Ray observed, heading back to his horse. "We could have gotten the drop on him, Pa. I bet he isn't even armed." "This type of thing takes some planning, Ray," Hank replied as he mounted, wondering if Ray wasn't right, and that he'd just lost a grand opportunity to force Thomas to give him the map. "He done caught us by surprise." "Then why don't we just run after him and get it? He'll protect the girl and give you the map if you say you'll kill her." Hank considered that, then shook his head. "We don't know where May Bailey is. We do that, she could get the drop on us." "Oh. Bill always said she was a tough lil gal. Shoulda been an outlaw. She'd shoot us dead as dog meat if she knew who we was." Maneuvering back down the hill, they trotted back to the road and passed the Bailey place. In the distance, near the barn, Hank saw Wyatt Thomas unhitching the buggy, but the girl was nowhere in sight. I wonder if he'd be married now, Hank speculated as they rode by. I wonder how an outlaw like him would get hitched to a petty gal like that. Nice, respectable girls don't marry our kind. Maybe he never told her. Hank had to nod. That might prove to be true. I can see him lying about his past to get himself hitched. I'd like to marry a girl like that, Ray said. Putty, respectable. Hank eyed his sidelong. You ready to settle down with a house, a job, raise kids? Ray blushed to his hairline. Maybe not the job part. Kids, yeah, someday. Just know you can't ride outside the law and then come home to a wife and babies. It's one or the other, kid. Then I reckon I'd rather ride with you, Pa, Ray told him. We'll get a new gang together, a new wolf gang, and rob banks and steal cattle. The law will never touch us. Hank felt pride rise within him. That's just what we'll do. Chapter 12. Feeling more terrible than ever, Cassidy went straight to her room after Wyatt helped her down from the buggy. I should have told him. It was the perfect time, why didn't I tell him? Pacing her room, she paused to stare up at the mountains through the window, calling herself 100 times a fool. She was too agitated to remain still for long, however. I'm here on false pretenses, she muttered, striding around again. I should have told him. Then if he decided to hate me, I am free to leave and go where I want. But if he decided he doesn't hate me and still wants to marry me, that stopped her cold. Cassidy was so sure that Wyatt and May would denounce her if she told the truth. What would she do if they did not? What if they forgave her instantly? She hadn't considered that at all. In any case, she couldn't continue to live under a lie. I have to tell them, I have to. But how? She'd lived under their roof and eaten their food for nearly 2 weeks now. She considered announcing it at the supper table that evening, then her courage failed her. She envisioned their anger, their condemnation, and knew that would be more than she could bear. Then she would be forced to endure their scorn while Wyatt drove her into town to drop her at the hotel. Cassidy shuddered at the very thought. I couldn't face him if he hated me, she muttered. Better that I tell him while in town, so he can just walk away from me, and we'd never have to see each other again. She derided herself for being a coward. I didn't come here to marry him anyway. Had I told him the truth right away, I wouldn't be in this muddle. I should tell them both now, then deal with him hating me, then let him drive me to town. Determined to tell them both at supper, Cassidy walked into the kitchen to help as she usually did, and found Wyatt and May both in it, smiling, happy to see her, and her courage failed her utterly. Emily, May exclaimed. Come in, we're having an early dinner. I did all the cooking while you two were out. Let's eat it while it's hot. I made ham and roasted potatoes with sweet peas. Cassidy swallowed hard, trying to find her lost determination to end this charade once and for all. And watch their laughter die, to view their condemnation after this welcome. God forgive me, I can't. She tried hard to smile, to pretend happiness and joy, and soon it didn't have to come forced. Before the meal was half over, she no longer feigned laughter as May told stories of her life with her husband in town when it was first founded. Wyatt shared smiles with her, and once again, Cassidy felt that connection with him, that feeling that if she just gave him a chance, she might find she loved him and that he loved her. Maybe my dream might come true, if I let it. If I told them and gave them a chance to forgive me. Though she didn't want to destroy their evening, Cassidy was still determined to find the right opportunity to tell them she was not Emily Evans. With Wyatt gone early the next morning to work, Cassidy planned to tell them that evening. Then he returned home, dead tired, his back aching from carrying heavy loads, and she knew that was not the best time either. Thus, she bided her time, searching for the opportunity that never seemed to materialize. At the same time, she found herself deeply enmeshed in their lives, knowing she had taken yet another small step toward falling in love with Wyatt as she gazed across the table from him at supper. More and more, she found herself mesmerized by his stare and his sweet smile. She loved it when he held her hand as they walked down to the corral in the dark after the dishes were done. "I really like you," Wyatt whispered just before he kissed her. Dizzy with excitement, she held both his hands in hers as she kissed him back. She felt his warm lips on hers, as a tremor of anticipation and eagerness filled her belly. "I like you, too," she murmured, breathless when Wyatt rested his brow against hers. Cassidy snuggled into his shoulder when he put his arm around her, both of them staring up at the stars, the moon just rising over the distant plains. She gazed up at the brightest star she could see, perhaps Venus, wondering if she should wish upon it. Feeling a tad mischievous, she did, and she silently wished Wyatt would ask her to marry him again, and she would say yes. "Tomorrow is Saturday," Wyatt said, his voice low. "It ain't Philadelphia by any stretch, but there is a nice restaurant in town. May I take you to dinner?" "I would love that, Wyatt," she replied, twisting her head to gaze up at him. "It's like you are really courting me." He chuckled. "I should have been doing that all along, I reckon. I can get off work a little early, then come home to change." May won't mind. May not only didn't mind, she all but dressed Cassidy herself in the green silk gown, brushing out her sleek red hair before braiding it. Then she coiled the thick rope into an attractive coif atop Cassidy's head. The slender chain with the pendant and jewel encircled her slender neck. Wyatt, dressed in his finest tie, shirt, and polished boots, and gaped in awe as Cassidy emerged from her room with May behind her. In his struggle to find a compliment, tangling his tongue in the process, May said, impatiently, "Go on, you two. Have a nice dinner. I won't wait up for you." Cassidy accepted Wyatt's arm as May ushered them out the door and into the buggy. Feeling as though she were living in a fairy tale, she had the best time with him, laughing and talking as though they had known each other forever, not simply the last 3 weeks. Their suppers were cooked to perfection, she drank a delightful punch, and for once she felt as though she had shed all her normal reserves. Sipping her drink, Cassidy watched in slight confusion, smiling, as Wyatt rose to walk around the table, his eyes on her. Before she could catch her breath, he was on his knee, a ring in his hand. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice husky. "I love you, Emily, and want you for my wife." Cassidy's tongue froze to the roof of her mouth. "Wyatt," she began. Gathering her wits and her courage, she enclosed his hand, the ring within it, within hers. Gazing at him earnestly, she went on, unshed tears in her eyes. "Before I say yes, which I dearly wish to do, I must tell you something." "You can tell me anything." Wyatt bent to kiss her folded hands. "I am not Emily Evans." He jerked his eyes back to her face. "What?" he asked, all his suspicions bursting forth. "Then who are you?" "Please sit back down, Wyatt." As he returned to his chair, the ring still in his hand, Cassidy gazed around at the other diners, stunned. Meeting his gaze and taking a firm hold on her courage, Cassidy went on. "My name is Cassidy Fields. Emily, whom you have been writing to, and whom you asked to marry, is my best friend." "I don't understand," Wyatt said, and Cassidy recognized the growing anger in his tight expression. She hurried on. "Emily was set to move here and marry you, Wyatt. But her mother became gravely ill, and she was the only one to care for her. I myself was in a bind. My father agreed to marry me to an older man, a business associate of his, whom I abhorred. The man you said you would tell me about." "Yes. He was as old as my father and Alec. I couldn't stand him." Wyatt sat back in his chair. "So, you came in Emily's place?" "With her blessing and permission." Cassidy gazed firmly back. This was her idea. It was what she wanted me to do. "So, I'm just some pawn to be played between you and the real Emily," he said. "I see. Actually, that isn't so. I intended to tell you the truth the moment I got off the train and merely ask you to point me to the hotel. I used the ticket to escape my fate and planned to merely stop here, tell you why Emily couldn't come, and then take another train to Denver. So why didn't you? Wyatt glared at her. Why did you let me believe you were Emily, live in my home and let me fall for you? That was wrong of me, I know, she admitted. I'm sorry. I was exhausted, confused, and you were, yourself. Well, I was attracted to you. He snorted. Sure, you were. I wanted to tell you many times, Wyatt, Cassidy said, her heart in her throat. I hadn't planned to stay, but I did. I was afraid that this was the reaction I'd get, and I didn't want to face it. Well, you're facing it now. Unshed tears burning in her eyes, Cassidy lifted her chin. So, you hate me now? Wyatt rubbed his face with his hands. I don't know what to think. Or feel. I reckon I need time to, well, consider it. There's no need. Cassidy refused to wipe away the tear that fell. If you can't believe that I did indeed fall in love with you, and if you are not willing to forgive me, then I will be on the next train. I will send someone for my things. Rising, she walked away, hearing him come after her. Cassidy, wait. Turning, knowing they were making the spectacle she had feared, she gazed into his face. She said nothing, waiting for him to speak as he floundered, trying to say whatever it was he wanted to say. Please give me a little time, he said, his voice low. Please. Without answering, Cassidy strode out the restaurant door and into the night. Chapter 13. Will you look at that? Hank marveled from the far side of the restaurant. Wyatt just got rejected by his lady friend. Hank watched her leave, with Wyatt Thomas starting after her, his expression torn, miserable, angry. This might be our chance, boy, Hank said softly, turning his face to the side as Wyatt paid for the meal and strode past them to the door. She'll most likely stay at the hotel while Loverboy goes home. This is your chance. Ray stared at him, his jaw slack. My chance? Yeah. We're staying at the hotel, too. Come mornin', you approach her, play her with your charms. When we get her to liking you more than him, we'll tell ol' Wyatt to bring the map or we'll kill her. But, Pa, Ray protested. Why would she like me? 'Cause you're a handsome devil, that's why, Hank replied, growing impatient. Turn on the smile, make her feel comfortable, play her into your hands, boy. I don't know if I can do that. Sure, you can. Pretend that she's the petty lady you want to marry and have little Rays with. Ray began to smile. Chapter 14. May stared at Wyatt, stunned. You what? I left her at the hotel. After loosening his tie and pouring himself a glass of whiskey, Wyatt sat on one of the sofas in the living room, listening to the insects buzz near the door. She lied to me, May. To us. She's not Emily. She's Emily's friend, Cassidy. May sat down across from him, her fingers twisted in her lap. Tell me what she said. With a defeated sigh, Wyatt told her all that Cassidy had said about coming here in Emily's place after Emily herself needed to remain in Philadelphia and care for her family. She claimed she wanted to tell us but didn't know how to. May's hazel eyes pinned him to the sofa, making him squirm. Now, did you tell her about your past, Wyatt? Did you tell her how you had ridden with an outlaw gang and what happened to your father? No. May stood up, looming over him, her expression cold with fury, her eyes snapping in the lamplight. How dare you lay your judgment on her, boy, she snarled. You are a hypocrite, and you have shamed me. What? What did I do? She impersonated Emily. She lied. What did I tell you about the lie of omission? You lied to her by not telling her that you are a wanted criminal. You let her fall in love with you, and never gave her the chance to decide if that is the life she wanted to live. Your lie is far worse than hers, Wyatt. Stunned, Wyatt opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. But. No, buts. Maybe she should have told you the truth from the beginning, but so should have you. You certainly have done more wrong to that girl than she did you. So what if she came under her friend's name? May set her hands to her hips, still glaring. I for one can completely understand her position. She had no one to turn to except us, and once she started to fall for you, she felt trapped. Wyatt stared up at her, feeling defensive and a little ashamed. How can you be so sure she's in love with me? I have eyes, boy, May snapped. I see it in the way she looks at you, the way she talks to you. Now, has she done anything else to warrant this condemnation from you? Stolen from you? Lied about other things? Well, she has money and never said anything about it. That's because it's none of your business. Not yet anyway. Give her half a chance and she most likely would tell you. Slumping on the sofa, Wyatt groaned. Now she's gone. No, she ain't gone. She's in town. May returned to her seat, her expression softening. Go in the morning. Talk to her, tell her that you have a secret as well, and that you understand her a little better. And tell her about my past, how Pa died, and risk her despising me, Wyatt replied, his tone bitter. What nice, respectable girl will marry an outlaw? That one, May said firmly. She told you the truth, didn't she? Now it's your turn. Long after May went to her room to sleep, Wyatt sat in the living room, staring into the dark and into the deepest recesses of himself. What he saw there, he didn't much care for. I am a hypocrite, he said into the silence. We both were playing the roles of different people. She had the courage to come clean, and I didn't. So, who is the better person? It ain't me. After a nearly sleepless night, Wyatt rose and dressed himself in the dark. Kissing May on the cheek as she began to cook breakfast, he went outside into the cool pre-dawn air to feed and care for the stock. He pitched hay, filled water troughs, fed the fowl and the pigs, mucked stalls in the barn. His heart numb, he found it difficult to believe he could ever win Cassidy back. May walked him to the porch after breakfast as he headed to the barn to saddle his horse. Bring her home, Wyatt, she said. He shook his head as he walked across the yard. That'll take a miracle, he muttered. Chapter 15. With her clothes at May's house, Cassidy still wore the green silk gown as she came down the stairs from her room at the hotel. Her face still slightly swollen from crying herself to sleep the night before, she knew she looked simply awful. Not normally one to weep, she nonetheless had unloaded all her pent-up emotions into her pillow. Though not truly hungry, she sat down in the dining room and was served hot tea almost immediately. Sipping it, she absently wondered whom she might hire to fetch her things from May's home. Not wanting to face Wyatt again, she planned to stay at the hotel until the train to Denver arrived. May I join you? Startled from her thoughts, Cassidy glanced up. A young man with dirty blonde hair, bright blue eyes and a winning smile stood next to her table. Excuse me, do I know you? He swept his hat from his head. My name is Raymond, ma'am, and I'm new here in town. You just looked so lonely sitting here, and I thought we might be lonely together. Cassidy half smiled, thinking he was a very good-looking fellow, charming, but she'd had her fill of handsome men. I don't think that's a good idea, sir, she started to say, but he sat opposite her instantly. Might I have your name? He asked. Unsure whether to demand that he leave her alone and depart or relax and enjoy the company for a short while, she replied, Cassidy Fields. What a beautiful name, Raymond replied, his smile widening. Have you lived here long, Miss Fields? No. And I'm not staying. That's a shame. Where do you plan to go? Her annoyance rising, Cassidy lifted her chin. I believe that is my business and you are presumptuous. Raymond lifted his hands in surrender. I am sorry, ma'am. I'm just trying to be cordial. Eyeing him closely, she found him a bit too eager, and the way his eyes were devouring her put her on edge. While she had enjoyed Wyatt looking at her, she did not care at all for Raymond doing so. She pushed back her chair in preparation for rising. If you'll excuse me. Raymond's smile vanished. You sit right there, lady, he told her, his voice hard. I have a weapon pointed right at your innards under the table. Do as I say and nothing will happen to you. Freezing in place, Cassidy stared at him. "What do you want?" "Something your friend Wyatt has," Raymond replied, glancing around surreptitiously, licking his lips. "Pa and me will exchange you for it." "Wyatt wants nothing to do with me." "That may be so, but he won't let no sweet lady die over a map. He may be a wanted outlaw same as us, but he ain't no killer." Feeling sick to her stomach, Cassidy felt icy cold, a chill running through her veins. Her hands trembled, and she clasped them together on the table to hide it. "You're a liar, sir," she snapped, her mouth dry. "Wyatt is no outlaw. He's far too sweet and kind and ambitious." The stranger opposite her chuckled. "No, he ain't. Wyatt ran with my pa, Hank Wolf, just like his ol' man did. My pa shot his down a few years back." Wyatt had never told her how his father died, Cassidy reminded herself, nor had it been her business to inquire. "You're lying," she accused him. "And what's the importance of this map anyway?" "It marks the loot the gang buried over the years," Raymond replied, keeping an eye out for trouble. "When Pa shot old Bill Thomas, Bill had the map. Me and Pa been looking for Wyatt ever since. To get it back." "I see." Cassidy glanced around, wondering how she could signal someone to help her. "And what kind of weapon did he have pointed at her? Was it a gun?" Raymond must have observed something past her through the hotel's windows, for he suddenly said, "Now, lady, you're gonna get up real quiet like and come with me. I'll have this little gun on your back the whole time. I'll shoot you down if you give me trouble." Obeying him, Cassidy stood up from the table and walked shakily across the dining room to the doors, with Raymond one step behind her. Real fear coursed through her, her entire body trembling as she set her hand to the handle. "Oh, Wyatt, just give them the map. I don't want to see you get hurt. I do love you." Chapter 16. Wyatt tied his horse to the hitching rail just down the street from the hotel. He shoved down his misery, concentrating instead on how he could get Cassidy to sit down to listen to him, to let him explain. As he strode toward the big double doors, he saw Cassidy emerge from them, a tall young man behind her. She still wore the gown from the evening before, and she raised her eyes to his. He stiffened immediately, his instincts screaming. Cassidy was terrified. Instantly, he felt a hard jab in his ribcage. "Hello, Wyatt." Wyatt recognized that voice. Gritting his teeth, rage flowing through him. Once that voice had frightened him, turned his bowels to water. Now, after 2 years of craving his revenge for the death of his father, Wyatt feared it no more. "Hank," he replied, his tone even. "How nice to see you again." Hank chuckled in his ear. "You growed up, boy. Ain't scared of me no more." Wyatt gazed at Cassidy, standing there with the young man behind her, no doubt with a gun pointed at her back. The young man appeared nearly as frightened as she did, his lips thinned, his eyes wide with near panic. "He ain't no killer. He's a boy. I reckon this ain't a social call, Hank. What do you want?" "The map your pa had in his saddlebags," Hank said. "You're gonna trot on back while we keep your little gal company. You don't come back with it, she dies." "Got it? What map?" The sharp jab came again. "A map to the loot we done buried. If you threw it away, Wyatt, your lady won't be the only one to die. I'll kill you and your Aunt May. Now get back on your horse and fetch it. You got 1 hour. I don't recall seeing any map. Maybe Pa never had it. You best go." Instantly, Wyatt spun. His backhanded blow caught Hank's gun hand and jammed it to the side. The gun went off, the bullet splintering a hole in the wooden sidewalk. Without hesitation, Wyatt punched Hank hard in his Adam's apple, then brought his hand down to seize the Colt from Hank's slack hand. Choking, Hank's hand went to his throat at the same time Wyatt cracked him hard across the forehead with the revolver. Hank dropped to the sidewalk like a stone, bleeding from his head, still snorting, trying to breathe through his broken throat. Snapping around, Wyatt pointed the gun at the kid behind Cassidy. "Drop it," he ordered. People ran toward them, Slim included, gathering at the sound of the gunshot. The kid licked his lips, near panic, glancing from the people to the gun in Wyatt's hands, and then to his steely eyes. "If she dies, so do you," Wyatt added. "You can't get away, and I'll kill you if you try." A small gun dropped to the sidewalk as the kid raised his hands over his head. "I ain't armed no more." Cassidy ran to Wyatt, flinging herself against his chest even as he continued to point the gun at the boy. "Wyatt," she cried, "oh, Wyatt." He held her close with one arm, feeling her body tremble, her uncontrollable shaking. Relief spread through him that she hadn't been harmed, and yet his guilt also rose. His past had caught up to him and nearly got the woman he loved killed. "You're safe now," he murmured. "You're safe. I'm going to take care of you." Slim, his own revolver in his hand, stepped up to the young man, but his piercing eyes were on Wyatt. "What's going on here?" he demanded, picking up the small gun. Wyatt lowered the Colt and stepped around a still thrashing, gurgling Hank. "That's Hank Wolf," he said, pointing with the revolver. He eyed the kid. "From his looks, I'd say that's his son." Slim's brows shot up. "Hank Wolf?" he breathed. "That man has been wanted for years. There's a mighty fine price on his head, boy." Wyatt nodded. "My pa was an outlaw, Slim," he said. "He ran with Hank and his gang. He shot my pa down. He also done murdered a woman in Silver Springs, New Mexico," Slim added, staring down at the outlaw on the ground. "You did good here, boy. But what did they want with you?" "He claims my pa had a map to some buried gang loot," Wyatt replied. "Maybe it's true, I don't know. He was holding Cassidy here hostage." Slim eyed Cassidy, still in Wyatt's arms. Her shaking had started to subside. "I thought her name was Emily." Cassidy turned toward Slim. "It's a long story, Slim," she said wearily. "Wyatt and I have much to talk about." Slim shook his head. "Ain't none of my business anyway. Wyatt, if your lady there will let you, help me get these prisoners to the jail. I'll wire the government agency responsible for reward money. I'll see to it you get it." Epilogue. Sitting on a blanket beside the pond where they had their first picnic, Cassidy gazed at Wyatt. He fingered the old map in his hands, the one he found among his father's possessions, the one Hank and his son Ray nearly killed them both to obtain. "I know what you're thinking," she said. Wyatt glanced at her. "You do? With the reward money and what the gang buried, you'll have enough cash to buy this place." He smiled. "But that money don't belong to me. I'll ride out to find it, if I can, maybe see who it belongs to." "If you can't," she said, "it's yours." He gazed out over the mountains. "Ours," he corrected her, "if you agree to marry me." Silent, Cassidy watched his profile, thinking of how much she loved him, how hard she had fallen for him in such a short time. "We both had secrets we should have told each other," she said at last. "Do we forgive each other for them?" Turning to gaze into her eyes, Wyatt replied, "I forgive you, Cassidy. And I hope you'll forgive me for having once been an outlaw. I've tried hard to be the man my pa wanted me to be. I would say that you've succeeded. Had you told me from the beginning, I still would have loved you." Cassidy grinned. "It might have taken me longer, though." Wyatt laughed. "But I still would have loved you the minute I saw you had you confessed your secret right away. I have another secret, Wyatt. Somehow, I don't think I will be surprised in the least. My parents are quite wealthy," Cassidy said. "And in a way, so am I. When I turn 21, I'll have access to a trust fund that my father set up years ago. My grandparents left me quite a lot." Wyatt's grin never faded. "Actually, I suspected something like that all along." "So, that's why you like me," she teased. "Like you?" Wyatt turned to her and knelt. He pulled a ring from his pocket, the same one he'd had before. "I love you, Cassidy Fields. Will you marry me?" Bending her head and feeling joy and happiness run through her, Cassidy kissed him. "Yes, Wyatt Thomas," she murmured against his lips. "Yes, I will marry you." The end. Thank you for listening to this heartwarming story by Susanna Calloway. You can be assured that all her books are clean and wholesome. To find other romances by Susanna Calloway, as well as the other authors at Tika House Publishing, visit www.tikahousepublishing.com. Remember to hit like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next Susanna Calloway Western romance.